Resilience Action Forum we had was very successful, and we worked through some of the procedures on this one here. The intent is to do less presentation and a little bit more discussion with everybody here. But I would like to begin by turning this over to Mayor Suarez. This is his action forum, and allow him to provide some opening comments before we begin the dialogue.
Thank you, Alan. Hopefully you can hear me. You know, this is, like you said, the first Resiliency Action Forum was extremely successful. And I think it was successful for a variety of reasons. The first is I wanted everyone in the community to know exactly how much emphasis, effort, resources we're putting into resiliency. The way we look at resiliency, it's not about one department, it's not about one director, it's about our entire government coming together and marshaling all the resources that we have to make our city more resilient and to make our government more resilient to the inevitable shocks that we're seeing, not just climatic, but certainly economic, health, et cetera. And so I think it was incredibly helpful. I also thought it was great that we brought in so many different organizations, because what we're doing is we're tapping into that resource as well, which is not just what we have on the government side, but it's also what's out there in the private sector and nonprofit and NGO side. Those organizations have subject matter expertise in a variety of different areas. And it's incumbent upon us that we maintain a dialogue and that we create levels of accountability so that everyone can understand what direction we're heading in, what we're willing to do, and what we can do as a government. I think at the end of the day, we have a few things that we have to continue to do. One is we have to finalize our stormwater master plan. Two, we have to present, and I know we're going to be presenting next year, our carbon neutrality plan. Three, we have to do things as basic as fix our pumps, which we are in the final stages of fixing our Brickle pump. And then I think have a gauge about, is that Brickle pump even enough? Is that pump enough to deal with the kind of storm surge that we've been seeing from events like hurricanes and tropical storms? And then I think we have to continue to discuss our Miami Forever plan and how we're going to roll it out and how it's going to make us more resilient and help us with individual homeowners that have insurance plans and insurance policies, and create kind of a return on investment for them. So I think that's the sort of the continuing conversation that we want to have. I'm really thankful for all of your efforts. And I'll just conclude by saying that we want to have accountability. We want to have a point where we have a website up that has everything: our water quality, our air quality, all of our plans, whether it's Miami Forever plans, or whether it's our carbon neutrality plan, our stormwater master plan. We want them to be available. We want to hold ourselves accountable throughout that process. And I'm really thankful that we decided to do this, because I do think that it creates a level of transparency and accountability that, frankly, and priority, that I think is important for people to understand that this is our priority. The number one priority of the city is to be here forever. And we're not going to be here forever if we don't take proactive steps to make sure that that's a reality. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank your entire team, Elisa, everyone who works so hard. I see your tweets and your social media messages, and I'm so thankful for all your hard work.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor. I also see that we have the city manager, Art Noriega, participating today. I don't know, sir, if you would like to address the audience before. I have some notes and comments that I'll provide, and then we'll get into the open forum portion of the session.
No, Alan, I mean, the mayor pretty much was very clear on kind of what the expectations are and the benefits of this group obviously meeting on a regular basis. And I think with your leadership and the connectivity with all the departments, I think, his vision and his platform on this, and certainly the cities as a whole, will be, kind of in real good hands. I just think it's, as you mentioned so sort of briefly when we started, this isn't about presentations. This is about actionable items and taking real steps towards meeting our plan. So I'll segue it right back to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. If I can go through just a couple quick things. first thing I'd like to recognize the city on November 16th, it was announced that we made the A list from the Carbon Disclosure Project for our efforts on getting towards carbon neutrality. And this was a very welcome recognition of the work that's been going on by Alyssa and all the folks in the city on identifying what our carbon levels are and getting us on the pathway to getting to carbon neutral. There was only 88 cities globally that received this recognition. So I think it was an honor that we were recognized. And now we need to build on that to continue our efforts. Next, I would like to remind everybody on December 7th is the Climate Resilience Committee meeting at 6 p.m. We're still working through the changes now from 100% virtual to having in-person meetings, but we're going to try and figure out a way to make sure that we're still getting that same level of participation from the public, because it is so helpful when we have those meetings to have everybody involved with it and hearing about the things we're working on. The carbon mitigation plan, Alyssa has been leading that for us. And if you could just give a quick overview of where we are and the next couple steps, particularly where the public will begin to become involved with developing that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we have finished data collection for our forecasting. So the stage that we're in right now is that we're going to take all the information we collected and figure out what our business as usual scenario will be up till 2050. Then we'll use that to figure out what reductions we need to make in our greenhouse gas emissions and what sectors they ideally will be in. And then come around the time of the mayor's State of the City address, slightly after that, probably the beginning of February, we'll start to do community engagement around kind of implementation of the actions that are recommended by the consultant. So we'll have an idea of generally what sectors and kind of general ideas of things that will help us work towards those reductions in that carbon neutrality goal. And then we will work with the community in multiple different ways, online and surveys and stuff, to figure out how we should go about implementing these strategies that are recommended.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, it's very exciting to see this come together. And I know that a lot of the people who are online with us right now are going to be part of that as we're building the plan. I also know that a lot of the people who are online were part of building the Resilient 305 strategy that we're doing with Miami-Dade County and Miami Beach. And I'd like to highlight on December 2nd, we'll be releasing the year one report to talk about how the implementation of that strategy has been going. So there'll be more information coming up from the communications office as to the event and the release, but I would like to put December 2nd on your calendars because that is a huge milestone to have completed it and now be a year into implementing our resilience strategies. And the last thing is I would like to thank everybody who was involved as we had the tropical storm that came through and the flooding issues. We had a lot of participation from the public using IC Change to report flooding issues and challenges in the city that enabled us to get our responders to go there with pumps or Vector trucks to clean up the system and address the flooding challenge that we had. We've also had a lot of public participation on reporting illicit discharges through our discharge at miami.gov website. And that helps us to fix problems when they're happening. It's all about partnership with you all. So I do appreciate your involvement. And with that, I would like to open up the floor as we did last time. If you have questions or comments, and we will begin to have a discussion. So thank you very much. And the floor is open. So
if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the raise hand function. And then if you raise your hand, we will be able to call on you to promote you to speak, and then you can ask your question. Okay, I see Mihai Preda came on first. It was very close between them. Mihai, you should be able to speak now.
Mihai, we're not hearing you if you're trying to speak.
Yeah, one more.
Let me promote him again really quickly. Oh, he dropped off. So we'll come back to him when he gets back on.
Okay, so how about if let's go to Greg?
Hi there, this is Greg Bloom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right on. First, I want to commend you all. This is so exciting to see. The last session was heartwarming.
All right, now Greg dropped off.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear
This
you.
is Mihai.
So we'll come back to Greg.
We're gonna go back to Greg. Yes. All right. So hello. Probably you have you know me. I'm a science teacher. I worked with the Fridays for Future students, and we worked about a year and a half ago, all the way going to last November to get the city to pass a climate emergency resolution, right? Where the city recognized that we are in a climate emergency. And 1 year later, we still don't have the climate emergency on the website listed. It's the climate emergency is a bigger emergency than the COVID emergency, and people in the city of Miami need to know about it. So I know that the city is trying to get a mitigation plan, meaning to reduce emissions, but the implementation of this plan has been delayed until next April, or with the reason that the city needs to seek input from the population. But at the same time, we have we see that the city is not even listing the climate emergency on the website, on the Instagram, and so on. So here is my hypothesis about what is going on. The city of Miami is not interested in acting on the climate emergency. Okay, so I have plenty of material to share with everybody who is interested, but this is my explanation for what is going on. Okay, thank you.
I think one thing we have been working on and we have not tried yet is Mayor Suarez mentioned it earlier, is we're trying to completely rebuild our resilience website in order to have information about the programs, the projects, and the initiatives that are going on. And it may be good if, I think we're close to the point where it will be finalized, but maybe if we could have, Alyssa, a beta session and share it with some folks who may be interested in previewing it, giving us some feedback as to what's going to go on there, so that when we go live, it's addressing your needs. You know, there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, but again, it's all happened within city employees to this point. So it might be time for doing that type of a beta test of it, and then changing or modifying to really meet their needs.
Director Dodd, there is a climate change in the city of Miami page under the Division of Emergency Management that was recently updated. We have pages on how climate change impacts the city of Miami, what the city of Miami is doing regarding climate change, including climate adaptation, carbon mitigation, sustainability, what partnerships we have. We have an inventory, a greenhouse gas inventory from 2018. We have the climate adaptation strategy and the Miami Forever climate ready strategy on that page. So it may just be of you know, advertising this page, but it is under the Division of Emergency Management page. I'll share the link here if we can on the page.
If I may, can we make the distinction between climate change and climate emergency? I was teaching about climate change 20 years ago. Now we are in a climate emergency. I'm speaking specifically about the climate emergency, which was recognized officially by the city a year ago. So the question is the city going to post on its homepage the climate emergency, not climate change, climate emergency? This is my specific question. If you can please address the climate emergency.
Let me take a shot at it. We declared a climate emergency, not only in the city, but nationally. I did that as chair of the Environment Committee for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Because of that climate emergency, we have entered into C40, where we have pledged carbon neutrality. We have signed on to the Paris Accord as a city that will follow those guidelines. I advocated yesterday with the president-elect and the vice president-elect regarding climate. I was specifically requested by the U.S. Conference of Mayors to talk about climate. So we're going to be potentially the point person for the new administration on climate. The president-elect said that he wanted to hear from us, from me specifically, what he felt were the best investments for mitigation and for resiliency. So we have a mitigation strategy that we're implementing, right, to reverse climate change. But declaring something an emergency doesn't mean that we can solve it overnight. I wish we could. Trust me. If I could, I would. And certainly I wanted to declare it an emergency because I think we needed to heighten it. And the fact that we're meeting on a monthly basis, just as a resiliency action group, to me is an indication that we're taking it as if it's an emergency. We have a heightened sense of awareness of this issue. There's no other issue right now in the city that we meet as an administration like this on a monthly basis with the community. None. The closest thing that we come to with this is when we do our agenda briefings for our commission meetings, but the community is not involved in that. This is an interactive process, and we're seeing the effects of this on a day-to-day basis, and we're also dealing with things that are emergencies. For example, the fish kill in the bay, where Mr. Dodd had to act immediately and we had to get portable pumps into the bay to try to aerate the bay. Where we got an emergency procurement to try to put a filtration system to prevent toxins and to prevent plastics from continuing to get into the bay. So there are components of this emergency, of this climate emergency, that are more acute, and we deal with them on an acute basis. I hope that answered the question.
I'm gonna let Greg Bloom speak now.
Hi there. Sorry I got cut off earlier. Thank you all for all this. It's very exciting. I want to commend you for creating this forum. And I'm going to share, my comments are really a challenge. I think this is great. It's a good start. But to Mihai's point that this is really an emergency, one thing that I keep thinking about is how, if Miami went carbon neutral tomorrow, we would still be in an emergency. And we would still not be resilient, right? And so that's not to say that going carbon neutral is not worth doing. I'm excited to see you all talking about it. I think it could be a worthy goal, but it's neither necessary nor sufficient to establish a resilient community given the scale of the crisis. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts about how we distinguish. Obviously, we need to do a lot of different things at once. So I'm not saying it's not the right goal to have in the mix, but do you see a different set of objectives when it comes to resilience beyond just carbon neutrality and also beyond just raising the streets? And I think beyond that comment, I just encourage you to think about how we can create more spaces for this kind of deliberation so that people in community levels can get together and have these conversations at a more distributed scale than could even be possible if we did this every week, right? So I just want to thank you and also give you that challenge. Thank you.
Greg, I would be welcome. I would be happy to do it at that level to the extent that I can in terms of time, a commitment. Obviously, Zoom, the beauty of Zoom is it allows you to be very efficient. Look, I think you're right. I do think it's necessary, but not sufficient. In other words, I do think, being carbon neutral is a necessity for us, but it's not sufficient. And I think there are going to be a variety of other components with our tree planting initiative, right? To oxygenate our environment. It's not really going to be about raising roads. I haven't seen a lot about raising roads. I've seen stuff about raising seawalls. creating urban reservoirs and obviously upgrading our pumping and our our system of outfalls that we're now regulating with one-way tidal valves. So those are all important because, as you know, we're getting water from 3 different places, right? From the sky, from rain, from underneath, and from the bay itself, in the form of rising tides and also in the form of hurricanes and things of that nature. So I think those are all important components, but we're also focusing on, and that's why we have all these departments on here. We're also focusing on affordable housing with our Miami Forever plan. We're focusing on our economic recovery. Fernando leads the economic recovery task force to come out of COVID in a way that's strong. Robert has done an amazing job with emergency management throughout this pandemic. He's been incredible. Our manager got selected, ratified, and then went right into like 3 or 4 emergencies. So, it's been an all hands on deck approach, but I hear what you're saying. And I do think that, for us, resiliency means how do we create a city that can deal with any kind of shock, whether it be short-term or long-term, and that is on the cutting edge of a adapted and also economically cutting edge city that can survive into the future. So it's kind of a broader view, but climate is a big part of it. Listen, I was with the president-elect yesterday, and the president-elect, this was interesting, something he said in answering my question on climate. He said when he's talking to people on national security, he says his national security advisors are telling him that climate is the #1 issue. And you're like, well, what does climate have to do with national security? And he was basically saying that his national security advisors are telling him, look, future wars will be fought based on, famines, will be fought based on, sea level rise and potentially, and people having to retreat, and there being people who are gentrified as a result of sea level rise and climate change. So he's basically elevating climate to a national security issue that if we don't address it, we may have to deal with it at the back end of it.
I'm going to give it to Clio Institute, Caroline or Olivia.
Hi, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. It's Olivia. Thank you so much for hosting this meeting again this month. My question is not necessarily related to the climate emergency or the mitigation plan, but I do agree with Mihai that it should be up on the website. So I look forward to seeing all those things, Mayor Suarez, that you said will be on the website coming up. In 2018, the City Commission passed a resolution to study climate gentrification and sort of look at what is it, what's going on, and what are some related policies that we can implement. I'm curious where the city is at with the resolution. Is that something we can find online? And if not, is this something that will be posted in 2021 so we can take a look what the result of that was? Thank you so much.
So let me answer some of it, and then I'll let Alan, maybe in Art, answer the other parts of it. First of all, these resolutions are available online. We should centralize them in a resiliency website. But I also want to, I guess I want to make another sort of suggestion, which is that, and I think, by the way, I think it's a wonderful question, and I'm glad you asked the question. But I also want this to be a forum of ideas. So if you guys have ideas, I don't want you to feel that you're only constrained to asking questions. I want you to be able to say, hey, look, I read a dissertation on this, and I really think we should be positioning ourselves this way or that way, or an information exchange. In terms of climate gentrification, I'll let Alan and Art talk about whether and how we're studying it. I was under the impression, and sometimes I'm incorrect in my impression, that the $4 million that we had segregated for the Miami Forever bond was supposed to go to combat climate gentrification. I have been saying that it's probably the only fund of its kind in the country, maybe in the world. I haven't, I'm not in a place right now, at least I'm not, maybe Alan and Art are in a different place, to give you more comfort in knowing that A, it's being studied properly, and B, it's going to be implemented properly. For me, the implementation of something like that and the way my vision of it, and I don't know if this is my vision, doesn't always carry the day, by the way. I'm sure you're not shocked to hear that. But my vision of it is that, we could give homeowners who are above the ridge in impoverished areas an opportunity to get grants that will allow them to retrofit their home with resilient retrofits, whether it's windows, roofs, whatever. And in exchange for that, they put a covenant or take a mortgage, a 0% interest mortgage, no repayment mortgage, where they have to keep the house for a certain period of time, whether it's 10 years or 20 years. And then at that time, at the maturity date, the debt, if you will, gets extinguished. It's completely extinguished. And if they try to flip the house in that time period, they have to pay it. But otherwise, they don't need to pay it to stay in their home and have a more, that was my vision of it. I'm not so sure that has become a reality yet, but that's what I'd like to see happen at the very minimum at that level, and then see if it needs to get bigger.
And Commissioner, I would say that it was a while back now where Sue Trone from the Planning Department did do a presentation to the committee talking specifically on this topic, and I don't remember some of the recommendations or things that came out of that. Maybe we can refresh it with the Planning Department and get that discussion going again. I don't see anybody from planning on right now, but we can possibly address that during the next meeting.
I would say we got to put that on the agenda. Like, let's put that on the agenda between now and the next meeting as a topic that we should try to tackle.
Roger.
Art, do you have anything on that, or? No. But it's on your radar now, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm just going to read out the list of people who have their hand raised right now, and just to say that there's quite a few. So let's try and keep our questions pointed and our responses pointed. We have Melissa, Brandon, Clara, Almi, Eric O, and then Ari. So just a heads up for those who have raised their hands. Melissa, you are on.
Hi there, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on, and I want to echo other folks in commending the mayor and your entire team for putting this forum together. It's absolutely, it absolutely demonstrates the city of Miami's leadership on climate issues, and I want to commend you all. I have one comment and one question or sort of idea along the lines of what the mayor encouraged us to share. So the idea and potential offering up is that our organization, which is National Parks Conservation Association, we've been around 101 years. We're a national nonprofit, but very active on the local and regional level as well. And something that our colleagues and myself are working on are developing an assessment looking at climate impacts upon national parks. And of course, here in Miami, we have Big Cypress National Preserve, Everglades National Park, and Biscayne National Park, really uniquely right on our borders of our urban landscape. And so when putting together this assessment, we're looking at climate impacts on national parks, as well as how the national parks are helping to imbue resilience for the city of Miami. And so the offering up part of my comment here is that we'd be happy to offer up the resulting reports. We're going to have some short summary style reports finished soon, as well as more comprehensive reports finished basically early January, February. We'd like to offer those up if they would be of any use for the city of Miami. And then the idea part of this that is related to that is, years and years ago, I was involved in helping to map and inventory Miami's left upland, pine rockland, and hardwood hammock habitats. And actually, a couple of years ago, I recall the mayor was at a ceremony where we dedicated one of Miami's old growth forest habitats. And so my idea is, I wonder, perhaps Alyssa or Alan, as you're looking at putting together a mitigation strategy and working towards a carbon neutral report for the city of Miami, I wonder if there might be a way where with community partners, there can be an assessment done to see what type of carbon is being sequestered in Miami's urban forest fragments, to show that Miami is also a leader, not only in your quote unquote conventional ways of mitigating carbon, but also in retaining our tree cover, retaining our urban forests. So that's the idea I have.
You know what I'd like to do? I think those are excellent ideas, Doctor, and I think we would love to have those reports, because I think they should be part of the resiliency website, so that people can understand how, our national parks contribute to our urban resiliency. But I also love the idea on how our canopy, we had a great presentation, which maybe we should do. I don't know if by any chance, I see Jose's name, but I don't know if Jose's actually on the call, Regalado. His name is there. But anyways, he's leading sort of our urban, hey Jose, how are you? He's leading sort of our urban canopy project. And I think maybe at the next meeting, maybe we can give them the presentation that you gave us, and so that they can get a sense for what we're looking at. Obviously, one of the big issues is that we need to work on with our utility company, and we have to maybe do in a little bit of a neighborhood project is undergrounding, transmission lines that are in the front yards that don't allow us to have a tree canopy. There are many neighborhoods where the electrical lines go in the front, and it makes it impossible to have, trees that not only provide shade, but also obviously decarbonize our environment. And that's something that we may want to look at on a pilot basis. But Jose, at some point, maybe next time we can make that part of the agenda for you to give that presentation, because I think it's a very thoughtful presentation.
Yeah, Mayor, we'll get with him and make sure that we get it on the agenda. And can I also add that I think that we talked about the Biscayne Bay, and we're going to be doing a lot of work with the results from the Biscayne Bay Task Force, and those recommendations will definitely feed into solutions that we can do here in the city and the county.
Next we have Brandon Hudspeth.
Yeah, hey, I hope everyone's doing okay and surviving this as well as we can. Long time no see. So I just wanted to ask about, I think, two specific questions I think one of them is mostly going to be a follow-up via email about what Mihai had mentioned about the climate emergency declaration actually being on the page and whatnot. There's actually a current problem on the homepage where one of the two things that are dedicated to COVID, they sort of like you're redirected to like what that isn't like there. I'll send this up in an email, but I was hoping that if we have like these two separate little portals down there for COVID that both seem to cover a lot of the same stuff, that maybe there could be one for hurricane relief talking about all this amazing stuff that we're doing, and also talking about having, a page for the climate emergency declaration or other ways to get involved, and especially, of course, information about these sort of meetings, which are super awesome, so thank you. But I'll ask if I can get an email to send that to, that would be great. But otherwise, I was wondering more about the spending as a percentage of our budget. I brought this up before, and finally had time to talk to Chris Castro about this over in Orlando, about their spending on decarbonization and other environmental initiatives, where ours went in the past year it was like cut in half from 800K-ish. Theirs went up to 1.2 million. And they said some interesting things about a $17.5 million grant leading to, once it's going to be completed, $2 million per year in savings on energy efficiency just in government buildings. And I was wondering more about that in terms of, do we see this budget of ours in terms of the amount that we spend on these initiatives, that sort of 800K number? Do we see that going up in future years? And do we see it reaching the percentage of the budget as Orlando is, or could we match them? Or, even if we were just 75% of what they're spending, that would be such a massive improvement. So I was wondering, in terms of the thinking on where we are compared to Orlando, do we want to be better than them in terms of doing the most? And if so, does that mean that the spending is going to increase next year? Yeah, I was wondering about that. And then the kind of second question was,
hold on, Brandon, can you give us a second to answer that first one?
Gotcha.
I see.
Yeah, I'm in a conference call. I'll
tell you afterwards.
Chris Rose, I see you're in here. Do you want to address the first question?
Sure. So I guess I would say the future is hard to tell, but I think that, you know, our focus going forward is going to be on resilience and you know, putting our money where our mouth is. I will say too, Alan and I have been working together quite a bit on some things in the budget to make sure that we can show what we're doing right now as part of it. We've gotten a very direct challenge from our mayor on how to go about doing it, and we're working on it. And I'll also say that Alan and I have been part of a cohort with some other cities recently on resilience and budgeting and resilient budgeting. So it's been a learning experience for both Alan and I as we go. So I'm not quite answering the question on how much will be set aside in future years, because that's kind of for all of us to work on.
Well, and in addition to that, to sort of, you know, help Chris out a little bit, that's also policy driven as well. So, you know, that's going to be as a result of a lot of feedback we get from the mayor and the commission as we look at our financial viability over the next 2-3 years, where we are in terms of the budget, in terms of the economy, right, and the impacts we're going to have that are sort of post-COVID related. But everything that I've heard since I've been here 9 months has really made this effort a priority. And so we'll approach it that way in terms of future budget years. But ultimately, you know, those are going to be decisions made by our elected officials. So we're going to have to make sure that they treat it as a priority as well.
Yeah, and I can tell you it is a priority. And obviously, you know, there was a lot of discussion in the last budget hearing about how we were reshuffling. And I think part of the reason, the irony of it is part of the reason why we're doing this today is as a result of that conversation, we wanted to re-engage in a more methodical, in a broader way, in a top-down way. And I think, you know, certainly we have a mid-year, which is in April. And that's when we usually reassess where we're at budgetarily. And then we have an end of the year. To give you an example, this last year, we went into the mid-year with a projected $25 million deficit because of COVID. We ended the year minus $2 million. So that allowed us not to have to let go of 66 police officers, 17 firefighters, to be able to restore their contractual compensation, which, I mean, these are our frontline workers that have been exposing themselves to COVID, you know, day in and day out. And they get, it's not like the private sector, they're getting, you know, very meager raises, you know, by comparison, 3%, whatever their anniversaries are or whatever. So, you know, and they're the ones that have been working nonstop. So, you know, we want to make sure that we have a good budget, but we definitely want to continue to prioritize resiliency as a component of that budget.
Brandon, you can send the information that you were mentioning about the website to resilience@miamigov.com. We have 5 other people waiting, so I'm gonna move on to one of them, but you can message us with all that information. Thank you. So next we have Clara. And please, if we can keep our questions concise, so that way we can make sure we get to everyone. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hi, this will be concise. Thank you so much for this forum. I'd like to follow up too on Mihai's question about putting the website on the banner of the home page. I hear a lot of people saying that. And just to emphasize, my neighbors know about COVID-19, but they don't know about the climate emergency. And we need to educate them the same way that we've educated them about COVID-19. So the question is, could you please put a banner on the homepage so that people can read about the climate emergency and know what's going on?
I think putting a banner on is absolutely essential to getting the our website have the amount of traffic that it should have. And then, you know, obviously one of the major components of the website will be the climate emergency. So part of the reason why, unfortunately, you know, the climate emergency is not getting the attention that COVID gets is because, I mean, COVID is a worldwide pandemic that press doesn't stop talking about 24/7. But I can tell you again, in my short conversation with the president-elect yesterday, that he is making climate a central focus, and not just making it about, sustainability, not just making it about resiliency. He's making it about national security. And I think that changes the conversation significantly for a lot of people who have before looked at climate as, a partisan issue. I think the more you talk about climate, and I've talked about climate in terms of economics, the more you talk about climate in terms of national security, you're elevating climate in the discussion to a place where, like a pandemic, I mean, it's life or death. So we hear you loud and clear.
Okay, next we have Almi.
Hi, can you hear me? Awesome, thank you. I just have a general comment. I just wanted to say, first off, thank you for hosting these meetings and allowing the public to make their voices heard. Climate change is perhaps the greatest threat our societies and natural environments are facing, and South Florida is often regarded as being ground zero for climate change impacts. It's great that we have these resources available, and I do want to emphasize that potential projects and goals for resiliency and climate action do need to be implemented quickly. However, I do recognize that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has caused turbulence at the present moment, but again, I'm so grateful that Miami is dedicated to taking action on climate. That action does need to be bold. The climate crisis is accelerating rapidly and occurring according to scientific research from organizations such as NASA. Even if we stopped emitting all greenhouse gases today, we would still experience climate change impacts because greenhouse gases remain in the atmosphere for years. So unfortunately, as of right now, there is no reversing the present climate change we are experiencing. It also presents additional challenges, particularly for Florida and Miami's goal of carbon neutrality. When certain aspects of natural environments dry up and die off from changing conditions brought by climate change, they release greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. An example of this would be peat loss in the Everglades. The Everglades are being destroyed faster than they are being restored. This massive landscape that can sequester carbon can quickly turn into a source of carbon provided continued action is not taken swiftly. So when we think about resiliency, we must not only focus on resilience in the form of great infrastructure, because our green infrastructure and natural features offer cost-efficient forms of increased resiliency while sequestering carbon and safeguarding communities. Some studies show that blue carbon systems can store double the carbon in a typical forest and at faster rates. Florida is home to the largest stretch of mangrove forests on the East Coast. We are also home to the Everglades that is filled with blue carbon systems that sequester carbon. Not protecting these systems pose threats to Miami's communities in the form of harms to water supplies and decreased resiliency in the face of extreme weather events, storm surge, and sea level rise. We need to be able to protect these features in order to maintain this goal of carbon neutrality. Not only this, but preserving these resources safeguard communities and help protect economies, as protection from extreme weather, storm surge, and sea level rise decreases cost of property damage and ultimately the costs associated with it. Again, I do recognize there are projects in place to protect these natural features, but I just wanted to emphasize certain aspects that are at stake without swift action. Declaring the climate emergency as recognized is a first step, and I hope that Miami can continue to prioritize said climate emergency and recognize that there is more at risk in our communities than what originally may meet the eye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Ari.
Hello. So my question is very simple. Like, by when are you going to place a climate emergency banner next to the COVID-19 banner on the homepage of the City of Miami website?
Ari, I think what we're going to do, and we can explore a variety of different ideas, but I think what we're going to do is put the resiliency banner on the website, because the problem is you can't put 1,000 banners, on the website. We're going to put one banner, which is going to be our resiliency website, and then the climate emergency will be top of page in terms of that. We can try doing it potentially the other way. I just don't know if it's efficient from a web. What happens when you open up a website is there's clutter everywhere, and you want it to be easy, and you want it to be efficient, and you want to be able to find. The other day I was trying to find something we're doing on COVID for business, for businesses, and I was thinking to myself, why isn't this on the front page? Why isn't this on a banner? I actually have to look for it. So, you know, it's those things happen. But we're going to try to do it first with the resiliency site. And then if we're not getting enough traffic, maybe we will put it on the front page.
But by when do you think you'll know when you should put it either on the city?
Well, we wanted to beta test it with you guys. So, I mean, I don't know how Alan's going to do that, how he actually intends to actually do that. But I do think part of the reason why we created this group was so we can have a lot of diverse opinions and a lot of diverse groups, and we can kind of use it as a laboratory for things. And so I think, I don't know if you want to do a beta test in terms of doing a presentation, Alan, in the next one, or do you want to do it? How do you want to do it?
Mayor, I think what I'd like to do is if anybody who is interested in being part of it can send an email to us at resilience@miamigov.com. And sometime over the next 2 weeks, we'll try to set up a virtual meeting to preview the website that we have created right now. As far as putting the banner on the front of the website, I've already gotten text saying that we're starting to have communication with the folks who build and maintain the website. So we'll figure out what the right wording is, how to do that. And more importantly, what we need to determine is the links that it will connect to make sure it's got the right information there. But we'll try and package that together over the next 2 weeks and set up a meeting with the folks to beta test it, show you what we have put together with a goal of trying to finalize it in December.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, we have a climate change page already, and I know that that's not exactly what you're asking for, but in short order, at the very minimum, we can add a link to the climate emergencies declaration, the ordinance language or the resolution language. So that way it's more accessible for the people who are looking for it. And that can happen very quickly in the next few days. So we're working on multiple communication tools on what we're doing about climate generally. So all of these comments are noted, and there are multiple things that we can do to meet short-term and then our longer-term communication strategy goals.
And I did receive a text from Mike Sarasky, who is our head of the Department of Innovation and IT, who said that we can set up a formal user testing session and bring some of you in to show what we've created so far.
Okay, next we have Oliver.
Hello, do you hear me? Okay. First, thank you very much for all your work. I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's very demanding. People want everything now, and I know it's not always possible. So thank you very, very much for everything you are doing right now. I'm a professional videographer. I do video, I have a production company, and if you guys in your communication efforts, you need some help, and I'm talking about free help, okay? If you need to put a video on the website or anything to communicate what the city of Miami is doing, I offer you my help. I live in Miami and I can produce professional grade quality video for you guys for free, just to say thanks for your effort, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Eric.
Yes, hello. I just wanted to, I guess, comment again on another commenter who mentioned mangroves, and what we're doing in the mitigation plan to improve and restore our natural infrastructure like mangroves. There are so many shoreline areas in Miami where every king tide and even just high tide with wind, there's the bay flooding into grassy areas or areas with just palm trees. And I just don't understand why we haven't been planting mangroves there, which are self-healing, self-repairing seawalls that require no maintenance.
If I could address this, Mayor Suarez, we had a meeting about a week ago with a group called Send It to the Sea. And that is specifically what they approached Mayor Suarez about, is to talk about how we can plant more mangroves, because it provides a lot of environmental benefits. It also provides a lot of flood protection benefits. And so we had the first discussion about it about a week ago. And if possibly I could connect you with them and you can help us to be part of that solution that we're working towards. They have an initial site where they would like to plant them. And as we work through the process, they would like to expand it to other areas in the city and the county as well.
Yes, please do send me that information or post that in the chat.
Okay, we have 1100 Brickleberry Drive. Oh,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes. Sorry about that. Sean Wilborn. I guess that's the address, but appreciate that, Alyssa. One of my concerns is litter and debris. I know that we've seen a good amount of it as far as we got the collection crews, but also we have the beautification teams, with their carts picking up the litter and debris that come from either the streets or people tossing out cigarette butts or whatever it may be. My question is there any sort of audit or data that we could use to, I don't want to say tax, but, try to quantify what materials are out there, so that way we can start putting the pressure on what's costing us, a lot of money to clean up.
That is, man, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is all the plastic that there is in particular. We're working on the 1000 inlet project to prevent a lot of that from getting into the bay. And we're also looking at a specific place on 27th Avenue because there's an outflow there that we think is contributing to a lot of the plastic that's ending up right on the shoreline of the park that's next to the little where you can take your boats in, where you can dock your boats and drop them off. It's a huge source of frustration. We're very lucky that we have so many organizations that will actually clean our parks and our public areas for free. And what we try to do there is be supportive of them. We obviously pick up the garbage once it's been accumulated. I'm open to whatever ideas you have on that. If there's a way that we can identify who's doing it, if there's a way, I mean, obviously, from an enforcement perspective, it's tough. But if we can find out who's doing it, there's got to be something. I mean, and I feel your frustration because I definitely feel like we need to do more. I was riding bike. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before with my son who's 6, and he went to one of the cleanups with Send It for the Sea, and we're literally riding bike trying to get to a park before AC's Icy's closed, and he looks to the right and he sees all that litter and he goes, Dad, we got to pick it up. And I was like, yeah, don't worry, we'll get somebody to pick it up. He's like, no, we should pick it up right now. Like, we need to stop and pick it up, So it gave me hope that if we can expose kids to the litter and how destructive it can be, we can change those habits for the next generation.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do have a follow-up if I could add on to it. In that example, would it be beneficial for, like you said, like for your son not to have to pick it up, but for him to, scan it, send that image somewhere, it get computed, and then, you have a strategy when you go out, oh, okay, we have this that has this, not just this many materials, but, the brain off of the material, get specific about what we're doing, because I think that having that database is going to be important when you're trying to, bring in some additional revenue, right? So.
Yeah. The public has been doing a great job of letting us know the areas that are dirty and also cleaning it. And we've also been doing that as well. I mean, the last cleanup that I had in the same spot where my son was talking about, I did the exact same thing. I took a picture of it, I sent it to Theo, and we organized a cleaning like within a week. And we cleaned it up immaculately, except more litter comes. Mm-hmm. So that's the part that's frustrating. And, especially when we spent all afternoon one day cleaning it up with 20, 30 volunteers, and then you see it and it's almost as bad as it was the day you cleaned it. So it's very frustrating. We have to find ways to stop it from getting into the bay, because then it washes up on our shores and washes up on some of the other islands that we have, the barrier islands. But we have to, we got to do a better job. And I'm open to any ideas that any of you all can come up with to keep our bay clean. I got to get on another call right now at 4. It's 4 o'clock. So I want to thank you all. You guys can continue. I've got to jump off, but I thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Mayor Suarez.
Sean, if I could, or Alan, if I could just answer Sean's question. So we have in the works, as part of our Shores Forward partnership with the Ocean Conservancy, something called the plastics audit. And we're going to be working with Ocean Conservancy to do a survey of the sources of plastic pollution within the city to figure out, where exactly it's coming from, what's the composition of the plastic debris that we're finding in and around the city, and then devise policy solutions for how we can prevent it from making its way to the bay, and try to stop it at the source. And that's currently in the works right now.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that information.
We'll definitely keep you posted on that.
Okay, well, it's 4 o'clock, and that's everyone, unless we want to. Yep, no, that's everyone. So, Alan.
Okay, so let me thank you again for joining today. Let me get to my notes here. Just like to remind everybody, the next Resilience Action Forum is scheduled for December 22nd, so please put it on your calendars for 3 p.m. If you have questions or things that you would like us to address in it, if you could send us an email ahead of time, it'll help us to make sure that we have the right people on the meeting to answer your questions, or be part of the discussion. If not, we'll do the best we can with the folks who are here, because we do have a lot of the staff members who are here, assistant city managers, department directors. So we'll always try and have a good presence from the city staff to answer the questions, but it would help us if we could be prepared with some numbers or specifics for some of it. And the last thing again is, if you'd like to be part of the beta testing, the review of the website, please send us an email with your name and contact information. Eric O asked for information about Send It to Sea and the mangrove projects. I don't have a way to get to do a chat room, but if you could send us an email to that so I can get you connected with Theo from Send It to the Sea, I'd really appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to say thank you everybody for being here today, and I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. So thank you very much.
Yep, and for those who are here, we have a website, miamigov.com/mayorsforum. It has our Resilience at Miami Gov email and the dates of the upcoming forums and the link to register.